Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Career Discovery presentation on careers in agriculture. I'm Amanda Wydula, University and Student Development Coordinator at the Bank of North Dakota, and I will be facilitating tonight's webinar. During tonight's session, students will learn about 3 careers in agriculture: soil science, ag education, and precision mapping and evaluation, and what education or skills is required for these careers. Just some housekeeping items. On the menu of the webinar, there is both a chat and a Q&A function that we will encourage all of you to use for your questions or comments that you have about today's webinar. We will address those questions throughout the entire webinar. We do have some set questions that we're going to be having our panelists address today, but we want to know what questions you have about careers in agriculture as well. So go ahead and put those questions in the question box when you have them, and we will answer those. So today we have 3 panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Brooke Thiel. Dr. Thiel is a lifelong North Dakotan who, sorry, I needed to change my slide, is passionate about agriculture and youth. Growing up, she was active in 4-H and FFA. Her favorite activities were raising pigs, judging livestock, and spending time gardening with her mom and grandpa. She taught high school agriculture education in Kindred, North Dakota for 7 years before returning to NDSU. Now she teaches future ag educators on how to prepare for the next generation of agricultural leaders across the upper Midwest. John Brecker has been a soil scientist with AgVise Laboratories in Northwood, North Dakota since 2017. He provides training and technical support on soil fertility and plant nutrition to agronomists and farmers across the northern Great Plains and Canadian prairies, working with over 20 different grain and forage crops. John was raised on a grain farm in the prairie pothole region of southeast North Dakota, where he saw the link between agriculture and the environment in our soil resources. An experienced traveler, John has gained expansive knowledge of cropping systems and soils across the United States, Canada, Puerto Rico, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. And last but certainly not least, we have Ben Munson from Farm QA. Ben graduated from NDSU in 2015 and is now a senior technology specialist with Farm QA. Farm QA is a Fargo-based company designing digital tools for crop consultants. His role involves sales, support, and product development. Most of his time is either spent with crop consultants in the field or coordinating new feature development with his software engineering colleagues. So welcome to tonight's webinar, everyone. Agriculture is a huge part of North Dakota's economy and way of life. In fact, North Dakota leads the nation in many agricultural products. So kicking off tonight's webinar, our first question will just be a career and company highlight. So we'll just have each of our panelists talk a little bit about the company they work for and how they got to their career. Dr. Thiel, we'll have you go first.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I am currently an assistant professor at North Dakota State University, and my job is preparing future ag teachers who will go out and teach high school ag classes in high schools across the state of North Dakota, Minnesota, etc., as well as preparing extension agents who work in the counties. That's a big part of our program as well. What led me to this career, I came to NDSU originally thinking that I wanted to be a veterinarian because I love science and I love animals, and that seemed like a logical fit. And it wasn't until I got to NDSU and started to explore the opportunities and careers that I recognized that ag education was really a better fit for me. And so part of my passion and motivation as a high school ag teacher was exposing students to the broad range of careers that exist, because I had a rather limited view as a high school graduate of what opportunities were available for me in agriculture. My parents, I didn't come from an production agriculture background. I came from more of a secondary route. My dad was in animal health products, like he sold animal health products, but it was different. I didn't grow up on a farm, so it took me a little bit longer to figure out where my place was in agriculture. But that is how I ended up where I am today, and I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, and John, we'll have you go next.
All right, like Brooke, I am very glad to be here. So I'm a soil scientist working for AgVise Laboratories, and we are a soil and plant analysis laboratory. And in a nutshell, that means we provide a lot of analytical services to farmers and agronomists. You're going, well, why would they need analytical services? But they have soil, plant, manure, water, all sorts of things that they need to know what is in there. And they get fertilizer analyzed, so they know what to put on, how much to put on, all those things. So I am a soil scientist, and I provide that technical support, help to explain those results to the growers and help them solve problems in the real world, both in the agricultural side as well as in the environmental side, because in our natural resources, whether it's soil, water, is where agriculture and the environment meet. And so help to address those different sides and I guess play the fact-finding mission and delivering the right kind of information. So I did come from a traditional farm background, I guess. My parents farmed in southeast North Dakota. It was a grain farm. We had hogs up until I was about 10. It's okay. I enjoyed animals, but a lot of work. I always enjoyed math and science. And so in high school, I didn't think I was going to be working in agriculture. And it wasn't until I got into college and I was going to become an engineer, because everybody who likes math and science has to become an engineer. No, you don't. There are so many other opportunities. And in college, being away from the farm made me realize what I really enjoyed. It was the land and producing food. And so that's how I made my way back to it, became a soil scientist. And here I'm having a lot of fun helping farmers and agronomists solve problems. It's great.
All right, and Ben.
All right, well, I'll echo all the other panelists and say thank you for having me. I'm with Farm QA, and we are a company. We were incorporated in 2015. We're based out of Fargo, and as described, we're looking at building digital tools for agronomy. And what that really means is software that helps the agronomists do their day-to-day job. And my role with that is sales, support, but really working with that agronomist to build this tool from the ground up. So I've spent a lot of time with our customer, with our agronomist, figuring out their pain points, what are the things that they struggle with on a day-to-day operation, and how can we turn that into a software tool that makes them more efficient in what they do. And as far as where I came from, I grew up in central Minnesota, and I grew up on a turkey farm. So a lot of ties to livestock here. But I also worked for a farmer for 2 years during my high school years, and I enjoyed that. But like John, I didn't see myself in an ag-related career. And I went to NDSU in 2010, and I had a focus on geosciences and natural resource management. And with that, I wanted to work in conservation, DNR type work. But I happened to be kind of in the right place, the right time kind of a deal. When I graduated, I knew the person that was the CEO of Farm QA, and it was an opportunity I wanted to pursue. And I'm extremely grateful that I did. I've come to really love the ag industry and really kind of the precision ag side of it. So that's kind of my backstory.
Wonderful. So the next question, we will actually go in reverse order. So Ben, you'll start first. Are there unique qualities or skill sets needed in an ag-related career?
Yeah, I thought about this question and looking at my role and what I've done, I'd say the ability to relate to people, those people skills, I think are often, I don't know if I'd say underrated, but they really are a critical role in really any position, but I found that in mine. It's the ability to relate to people in their situation, and what that brings to the table is the ability to effectively communicate with them if you can understand their position, what they deal with, what they do. So it's those people and communication skills. And then additionally, I was going to throw in resilience to that. And I just think about the ag markets and how much of a roller coaster that can be. And so you really have to be prepared for down times, good times, and everywhere in between, and be able to kind of bounce back from that in any position that you do in the ag industry.
All right, John.
So as I was looking at this question and jotting down some notes, there are two contradictory and complementary things that I thought of in agriculture. And one of them is independence. Farmers especially are very independent. They have to be self-motivated and driven, but also most people who work in agriculture, there's not that many of us. And so every person is kind of like their own business unit. And so you have to be very independent and being able to get the job done often on yourself, if you're out in the field scouting something, working on a different project. At the same time, there are a lot of people you rely on, and you have to be a team player, and you have to work in teams. So you have to know when independence is needed, and also when you have to work in a team. So just as Ben was saying, you have to have the right communication skills and the ability to cooperate with others, and be willing to say, yeah, I was wrong this time, or also know when to stick your guns likewise. So I found those two things to be very contradictory. Well, not contradictory, but complementary in different ways, because at different times you need those different skills. In addition, in agriculture, there's a lot a person needs to know, but you don't have to know everything. And I think there are the 3 knows, which are probably some of the most important things. And that is, know what you know what you don't know, and know who to ask if you need to find something out. And learning that at an early age, especially as you're coming into college, is going to help you out a long, long way.
Awesome. And Dr. Thiel?
Well, I would second everything that was just shared. But this is actually an area that I do a lot of research in, is what is it that people need in order to be prepared for careers? And what we know from employers is that the area that they see graduates lacking in the most are in transferable skills or soft skills, such as communication, problem solving, that independence, teamwork, etc. Critical thinking, creativity. All of those things are the areas where they really want to see graduates have those skills in order to be successful in future careers. So I think a lot of times we think about technical skills and academic skills, and those are important. But the areas that really are going to set you apart in an ag career are going to be those transferable skills. And so the ones that I would pick, if I had to pick from the list of like 30 transferable skills that exist, is I would say flexibility and adaptability, which I think goes back to Ben's point about resilience, is agriculture is changing so rapidly. Our world is changing rapidly. Our technologies are advancing. We have research that is turning over information at a rate faster today than ever before. And so the ability for those of us in careers to be able to adapt to things as they change and be flexible, I think we can all agree that COVID has made us all kind of view our roles and our jobs differently, and how do we change to be able to participate and compete in the current environment. That's going to continue, not because of COVID, hopefully, but just in general, we're going to have to be able to do that. And the other thing, which I believe ties to that, is a commitment to innovation, creativity, and a willingness to think outside the box and kind of re-envision how we can do things differently and better, to continue to find ways to feed the world. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but it really is at the heart what our role is in agriculture, right? Is to serve all of the people of the world, to ensure that people have the food, fuel, fiber that they need in order to live comfortable lives. So those are the 3 that I'd pick.
Wonderful. Yeah, those are some amazing qualities. And I mean, any students who are listening, or counselors of students, a lot of those aren't just in agriculture. I mean, especially those transferable skills. And this kind of leads into the next question. Just in case, you get out of your current career, or we're in a different industry once upon a time, having those skills that can go from one industry or one job to the next are super important. So our next question is, how did you enter the career you're in now, and what was your career path? And I know when you were introing, you kind of talked about this a little bit, and we'll go in a different order. So we'll start with John.
Yeah, so I kind of outlined it before, did the old come from a farm, went to college, decided to be an engineer, or then I decided not to be an engineer. And then I was kind of really in flux of, where do I want to go? Do I want to become an agronomist, a soil scientist, plant pathologist? Do I want to study ag econ? I mean, then all of a sudden you see the panacea of ag careers kind of opens up. And that's when I went back home, and I remember distinctly being in the combine with my father, think about, what are the things that really drove me and excited me and really made me passionate. And I was very lucky in high school to be part of a program called Envirothon. Some of you maybe are familiar with it. It's a natural resource conservation competition for high school students. And I thought about the soil resources and where I saw agriculture and some of these environmental things come together. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead, dive in head first into soil science, and I've enjoyed it very much because I get to play with all the scientific areas and also the production aspects and solving real world problems. And so the next important thing was taking lots of internships while I was in college, never taking a summer off to do, I don't know, go to Europe or something. No, you always have a good internship where you can learn and apply some of these physical skills. And you also get to tie the things you learn in the classroom to the real world. And it was through one of these internships that it was actually here that led me into my current career path. And so I guess kind of for like the past 10 years, I've kind of been doing this same old thing, but every day is different. There's lots of variety and it's been fun.
Wonderful. Ben, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, well, like I said, I did kind of outline this as well, but I had a passion for conservation, so very similar to John. And growing up, that's what I thought I was going to be doing, is really working in conservation. I did an internship every summer in college, like John mentioned as well, and a lot of that was with a local conservation office, and I did enjoy that. But like I was saying, it was kind of being in the right place at the right time with my role, in the sense that I was just talking to a personal friend of mine about something completely unrelated, and he brought up this company that he started, and he didn't realize that I had an ag background, and so we got to talking further, and I ended up saying I'm going to just kind of go on a limb and take this position, and it really checked two of my boxes. I knew I wanted to work outside and be part of the environment, and the second was conservation, like I said, and I really ended up being able to do that in my role, even though I didn't see it at the time. And in precision ag, we're working a lot with moisture probes and soil nutrients, and being good stewards of those resources and making sure that we're not over applying or overusing. And so it's fun to work with the tools that allow producers to make better decisions with the resources. And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of the genesis of where I wanted to be and where I ended up.
Awesome. And Dr. Thiel.
I have to tease John because I did go to Europe one summer. I did a couple of study abroads in the summer. I always wanted to study abroad in the fall or the spring, like for a full semester, and I never could because I was on the college livestock judging team. So I was traveling a lot for that. And so I did a study abroad in France for a month one summer, just to give you a hard time. But
that's okay, because I actually studied abroad in New Zealand for a whole semester. So all good times.
So, but I also laughed when you said, every kid who loves math and science becomes an engineer. And that was the same for me, right? With the math or the science and animals, I wanted to be a vet. That was like the only career path that I thought existed. And I actually, when I finished at NDSU, I thought I wanted to be a meat scientist. To get my PhD and work at NDSU, I did meats judging and worked with some of the faculty there. And there's a lot more opportunity for educational outreach at the university as well when you're working in a role like promoting, beef or pork or whatever else in the community. And so it kind of tied my love of education and animal science together. And it wasn't until I was student teaching that I really fell in love with teaching high school students. And so that is what led me into my career. Is I decided during student teaching not to go on for a master's in meat science, and instead to get a job as a teacher and just see what happened. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I'm very much a planner, and it was really hard to not have everything planned out. But what I think that's allowed me to do is take opportunities that maybe I wasn't able to predict as an 18-year-old. And so that when an opportunity was given to me and it seemed like something that would maybe fit within my realm of interest or in my abilities, it made sense to go through and try that opportunity. So like I said, I taught in Kindred for 7 years, loved teaching high school students. I felt like I could have done it the rest of my life, but this opportunity to go to NDSU and work on my PhD kind of came about a couple of different times. And finally, I thought, my goodness, if this is just going to continue to happen, I need to just do it and see where it takes me. And it's amazing what other opportunities open to you as you pursue education and pursue different opportunities and different experiences. Things that you never even imagined were out there are out there for you. So try to keep your options open and experience and look for experiences of things that you never know where they might take you.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question is not a scripted question. It's actually just kind of an ad hoc one based on the conversations that you had. There's a lot of career. I am not agriculture. I don't have an ag background in any capacity. And the three of you just like tossed out so many different careers that I didn't know existed, like meat science. I mean, that now that you say it, that's obviously a thing, but you never really thought about it. So when you were high school students or even early in your undergrad, did you know that the career that you have now, or maybe some of the parallel careers that you have existed? Like, I could do this for work?
I didn't. And I very much had misconceptions about my job. Like I knew that college professors existed, right? Like
Mhm.
I knew that they teach college students, but I didn't know that a part of my job would be working with high school students, working with current teachers, working with extension agents. Part of my job is working with the Northern Crops Institute, which is an advocacy group out of North Dakota that works with people all over the world promoting northern grown crops like wheat and soybeans to international buyers. Like I had no idea that that was going to be a part of my career path if you'd have asked me as a high school student, or that those opportunities existed, that I could pull all of the things that I love together into a career someday. I just had no idea.
And whoever wants to go next.
Yeah, I can
Ben
go.
or
So
John.
I,
Okay.
I was thinking about that as well. And so for me, in high school, I heard the statistic, and I don't know what it is, so I'm not really gonna to try it. But it said roughly X amount of jobs don't exist now that are going to be available when you're in the job market, and that was very much the case for me. I mean, my company was incorporated a month after I graduated, so I'm very much in that boat where no, obviously I didn't know where that this company existed or this job existed because it didn't. But for me, the precision ag side of things, what was interesting for me is I knew that that very vague term existed, but I didn't really know that some of my skill set and interests could fit and find a position in that like I did. And so that's just my perspective on it.
I can remember when I was young, my father would often take me with to ag meetings, and I guess he had no other place for me to be, so he always brought me with. And and so I can remember from an early age seeing NDSU extension agents, agronomists talking at different meetings, seed salesmen, but I never really thought those could be me. I was just a little kid, right? And and it's not until you get to a point when you're looking at the college major list and you're going, oh my gosh, you can study plant science, you can study soil science, you can study plant pathology, entomology, you can study ag business, ag econ, you can study accounting and like minor in ag. Everything imaginable is out there because agriculture is this big giant family, and there's literally any job along that side that and you could talk about in the general business world, but it also applies with an agricultural flavor. And wherever you look, there's going to be opportunity. I mean, as Ben outlined, if it was 10, 15 years ago, everything that you're working with didn't really exist before the digital cloud revolution. And here we are. It's the future.
Yeah.
So this was a question that came in. How would you advise, or what advice would you give to a student to prepare for maybe these jobs that don't necessarily exist yet? And this leads into a question I have in 2 slides, but how can they prepare for what agriculture is going to be like in 5 years, in 10 years? What can high school students do now to make sure that they plan correctly for the future, or maybe just plan for whatever career that they might have someday?
Well, I think one thing is going back to those transferable skills that we talked about, working on developing those, whether that's getting involved in student organizations to hone your leadership and responsibility skills, whether it's participating in speech or other activities, FFA, 4-H, to get that experience where you're working on teams and you're doing those things. I'm a big fan of the science fair. And in agriculture, we have an FFA, we have an agri-science fair, because I think that exposes students to some of the questions that we're asking in agriculture, that we need students to solve those problems, whether it's in precision ag or soils or food science or genetics. There's tons and tons of questions that we have. And, getting the experience as a high school student of what exists can be really beneficial. So that's one thing that I'll put out there if John and Ben have other thoughts at the time.
Be prepared for change. And I think we say it all the time in agriculture with planning for change. What's going to change? We don't know yet, but be prepared.
Right. Exactly.
And agriculture being a very slow industry to change, the people who are prepared and adapted, and I mean, we've already used the word resilient, have the ability to handle that, are going to be those who are going to be able to advance faster as the industry changes than those who, I guess, keep their boots stuck in the mud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess I don't have a whole lot to add to that, other than I think a characteristic that bodes well for the future, or really any person, is the problem solving skills. And if you can generically work on that and have that intuitively as part of your skill set, I think you can adapt for the future and be ready for the unforeseen.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So,
Actually, I have something
go
else to
ahead.
add to that. I was thinking, this goes back to something I had said earlier, but just trying things, looking for experiences. I mentioned meat science as a career. I got roped into being on a meats judging team once upon a time. It was not in my plan. It was not something that I saw in a catalog and was like, I want to be a meat scientist. It was an adult who said, hey, you should do this. You would be good at this. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I did. And that opened doors for me and exposed me to new things that I never would have seen or known existed had I not taken that opportunity. So whether it's Envirothon or being involved in a different organization or club, or when you go to college and you're take a class in something that you have an interest in science, but you've never considered soil science before. Take a soil science class and see what you think about it. I think that in ag education specifically, we talk about pathways. So there's a plant systems pathway, there's a food systems pathway, there's an ag power and technical systems pathway, because you have an interest in mechanics or you have an interest in animals or whatever that might be. Explore specifically in that pathway, but maybe don't pigeonhole yourself to saying I'm going to be a veterinarian, but I really love animals, so I'm going to go start trying some stuff in animal science and see where it takes me. Or I really love plant science, but I don't know what area, because the internships and clubs and organizations at college will expose you to some of those opportunities that you don't know exist.
That is fantastic advice. If I could repeat it again in the shorter, that's great. Do that.
Yeah. All right. So the next question is, and I think there's been a lot of things that you've said that are obvious, that are rewarding about your jobs, but what's been the most rewarding and challenging parts of your current position? And sorry, I got to pick an order. Ben, let's have you go first.
Okay, so for me, like I said, I was with the company from the ground up, so it's been very rewarding to be a part of and to build a product that goes from nothing to a viable product in the industry. And additionally, what I'd say is it's the people that I've met along the way. And so it's meeting with partners, people, others in the industry that I was able to build a relationship with. But then additionally, like I said, a big part of my role is meeting with the crop consultants, the growers, and understanding their pain points. And so that's been extremely rewarding to me, to picture going out, driving across the country, meeting with people, listening to them, and then going back a year later, 2 years later, and displaying what you've built to make their lives easier. and then seeing how they respond to that and use it and provide positive feedback, it has been extremely rewarding for me.
And John.
I agree with that 100% because people was going to be my answer. This was Family Feud. Number one answer, people. I mean, it's great. I do want to touch on what I consider one of the most challenging parts, which again, sometimes is people, but in agriculture, weather. It is impressive how quickly a year can change what we are facing. And this particular past year has generally speaking been good. I mean, there's a drought in Western North Dakota that was quite severe, but we look back at last year or the previous year, they're very wet years, and you can tell sometimes people get a little bit grumpy when the weather isn't so good. So weather is one of those things that unifies us all for the better or for the worse. And sometimes it can make for an awesome year. Other times it can be a little bit of a challenge. And we can't forget that Mother Nature is always, almost always in charge.
You can skip me, Amanda, to save time, because mine would be
Okay.
people.
Perfect. Okay, so I mean, we touched on this one already. Well, at least the next 10 years. Do you have any insights to how it's changed in the last 10 years? I know we kind of covered this too in a little bit earlier, but any other insights?
My experience has been it's changed fast. So I always joke that when I started teaching, which was only 10 years ago, like GPS was still kind of new. Like I had an actual TomTom GPS that I would take in the school Suburban. So that's how old I am. And now, like, we didn't even know, like, drones weren't even on our radar at the time. And you think about the impact that drone technology has on agriculture now. I mean, it's just changing so fast. So I think like innovations in the future, I think like what Ben does with software engineering. I mean, I think historically there are a ton of kids who love computers and software, and I know nothing about it. Coding is like not a part of what I do. But like we need kids who love agriculture and also love software and engineering and technology to come together in the future. Like it's really hard to take a kid from inner city somewhere who doesn't have any experience with agriculture and try to get them up to speed from a computer side as well as an agriculture side. So I see that has been a big change and is going to continue to be a big change.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, my passion is where things are going as an ag industry. And I'll keep it short here, but one of the statistics that I love to share during some of my presentations is this. So the cost of computing, or the cost of 1 gigabyte of data, that cost $300,000 in 1980. Today, the cost of 1 gigabit of storage is 2 cents. And so what does that mean for the industry? And it's the ability to compute, which then allows us to expand out to having drones in fields, to having automations, to having robots that are able to reduce the labor needed in fields. And so, yeah, there's just so many companies in this industry and so many good ideas that the things are going to change rapidly in the next 5 to 10 years because of that.
Oh, those are great technological changes and challenges and opportunities. There's one thing that I've viewed over the past 20 years, and it is how our world markets and trade policies have been changing. If we look back 10, 20 years, we weren't talking about Brazil, Argentina, or the Black Sea region. That has changed, and we are in a very different global market. So at the same time, our global challenges have shifted. Our global opportunities have also changed. So again, as everybody always has to be prepared for change in this industry. So as globalization has done, there will be some challenges, but again, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. And we talk about careers that don't even exist yet, or may be different than you thought. Some of you might not be living in North Dakota in 5, 10, 15 years. You might be working somewhere else in the world. And it's a very fascinating industry. It's a fascinating world, and there are many, many, many more changes to come.
Awesome. All right, so our last question for tonight. So reminder to all of our attendees, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the questions tab and we will address them after this next question. And I know this presentation has been chock full of excellent advice for high school students. I think if we did a panel like this with basically every industry in North Dakota, it would be so beneficial to students. But in general, to just wrap it up, if you could give one piece of advice to a high school student thinking about a career in ag, what would it be? Oh, I'm sorry. Brooke, Dr. Theo, let's have you go first.
Okay. So I would say get involved as in whatever way you can. If there's a 4-H club, if there's an FFA chapter, if you can work for a farmer, if you can get involved with an internship. Agriculture, so North Dakota already is tiny. I mean, like everyone in North Dakota knows everyone, or if you don't know that person, you know someone that they know. Agriculture is even smaller. Like everyone knows everyone in agriculture. And so if you can start networking and meeting people through whatever organization or capacity that is, that can be really beneficial and expose you to a lot of opportunities. And my second piece, and this is totally self-serving, is that you should go into agriculture because there are so many careers. Like I always told my high school students that wanted to go into business, I was like, why would you go into business? You need to go into ag business because then you'll get a job. Like there are, like the placement rate out of ag business is like 98% out of NDSU. It's ridiculous. So just there's like John said, whatever you're interested in, there's a place for that in agriculture. So find it and do it because you'll have a job for life.
John, we can
My
take
small
you.
tidbit is going to be if you can find a mentor that can provide some wisdom and some insight, latch on to them very soon. And it might be, you know, an older farmer or an agronomist, or I mean, it could be the egg banker in your small town. And if you come to college and you happen to find and you're in a club and you talk to the advisor, or maybe it's a professor, somebody who can provide that mentorship. If you got one, hold on to them because they are worth all their weight in gold. Because it's a very big industry, but again, it's also a very small industry. So they can connect you with the appropriate people that you need, and sometimes it ends up getting you a job, like it did for me. So I'll leave it there.
Well, I can keep mine short, as it kind of echoes what's been said here. But I would say do what you're passionate about, which can be cliche, but I think it's pursue what you're interested in and passionate about, and there's going to be jobs out there, like Brooke said, for your interest, specifically in the ag industry. But then additionally, work hard at what you do. If you can't get the job you want right away, if you can work hard and be dedicated at what you do, there's opportunity to move up. And so hard work is never going to fail you. And that's my piece of advice.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely great advice for students and such a good panel. We don't have any other questions, just a great advice and a thank you from someone who wrote in. So thank you all for joining us today. We are recording this session, so if you would like a recording to share with your students, if you're a counselor, a high school student in your life, son, daughter, niece, nephew, one of the many, the kid down the street, this is a great webinar to share with them. Our next webinar is next Wednesday, November 4th at noon Central Standard Time, and we will be doing a hot job feature on careers in coding, which I mean is very much needed across a lot of different industries, ag included. So you can register for that webinar, as well as all Career Discovery webinars on the Career Discovery tab on the Career Compass website. All right, thanks everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye.